The Department of Homeland Security says Mexican drug cartels have put a bounty on ICE and Border Protection officers in Chicago.
A shocking event has completely shattered the illusion of America's safety. Not a sweep on the streets, but a direct attack on the second largest law firm in the nation. Two prestigious lawyers were arrested, revealing a transnational criminal network hiding right in the heart of the elite legal system. With millions of doses of poison seized, this case proves that danger no longer appears chaotically, but is using professionalism and knowledge itself as a shield. Are you sure you're still safe when the enemy wears the face of success? The horrifying truth below will make you wake up. At 4:58 in the morning in the city of Seattle, Washington State, while the entire city was still immersed in deep sleep and the decorative lights were still twinkling on the quiet streets, a shocking event took place. This was not an ordinary arrest of criminals on the street. The target this time was the headquarters of the second largest law firm in the United States, a symbol of power, influence, and legal prestige. Two elite lawyers, Mohammed Hussein, 46 years old, and his wife, Faduma Ibrahim, 34 years old, were handcuffed and led away right at their luxurious workplace. Federal agents from the Drug Enforcement Agency and law enforcement forces flooded the grand marble-floored lobbies, seizing thousands of documents and disconnecting critical servers. Mohammed Hussein and Faduma Ibrahim are not just skilled lawyers, they are accused of being the central operators of a criminal campaign belonging to the CJNG organization, hiding in plain sight. They use their law degrees and professional prestige as a shield for large-scale prohibited substance transportation activities. This is a national infiltration right into the core of the American system. This network does not operate in the darkness of small alleys. They operate right in the gleaming glass offices in the city center. Their sophistication lies in knowing how to blend into everyone's normal life, turning legitimate activities into tools serving crime. As the agents sealed off the building, an undeniable truth emerged that violent criminal organizations had deeply embedded roots in the legal system until the silence of that morning was shattered. The objective of the Homeland Security Task Force was to eradicate the presence of transnational criminal organizations and foreign gangs from United States territory. The early morning raid that day was not merely a routine law enforcement operation, it was evidence of how deeply these organizations had rooted themselves in society. The agents had meticulously prepared for a decisive strike to break the long-standing silence. When the doors of the law firm were broken down, commands rang out urgently, marking the end of an era of sophisticated concealment. The seized files and sealed conference rooms revealed a truth about a command center lying right in the public eye. This is evidence that a dangerous network had deeply embedded its hands into the legal system until the authorities were forced to act. Their actual activities are far more profound and sophisticated. As the investigation delves deeper, the threat does not reveal itself through gunshots, but through a terrifying silence. This is not a street-level operation. It is a system designed to blend into the daily life of American people. The harmful substances are moved through clean warehouses in suburban areas, just minutes away from schools and residential homes. The trucks arrive during the day labeled as food, nutritional supplements, or medical supplies. Everything appears perfectly normal on the outside, and that is the most perfect disguise. Inside are synthetic substances sealed for mass distribution to the market. These substances are pressed into pills that look identical to real prescription drugs. Orders are placed through encrypted applications, and payments are made using digital technology. Packages are shipped via regular delivery routes. There are no dealers standing on street corners, no warning signs, just harmful agents silently infiltrating homes. This network is deadly because it is too precise. Shipments are scheduled specifically, routes always have backup plans. Money is laundered through multiple layers to survive arrest or raids. Investigators describe this as a business model based on human loss. This criminal organization even times its supplies to align with semesters and holidays, targeting young people first. As one agent said, this operation is not based on violence, but on invisibility. What the investigators discovered next turned a major prohibited substance case into a national warning. This is not a local operation, but a global supply chain built with the precision of a large corporation. Federal analysts have traced the pipeline across 3 continents. Chemical precursors leave ports in Asia under the guise of legitimate industrial shipments. They are rerouted to laboratories in Mexico, where the criminal organization's chemists transform them into synthetic harmful substances. From there, these substances cross the ocean, hidden in cargo containers. The open sea has replaced land borders, making detection far more difficult. Once inside the United States, this flow never stops. Shipments move eastward, then northward, supplying distribution centers before reaching Seattle, where Hussein's network controls operations. Every step is timed precisely, every shipment tracked. Losses are calculated and accepted as part of business costs. The human cost is utterly devastating. In the year 2025 alone, Washington State has recorded 3,588 overdose deaths. 76% of those are related to potent synthetic substances. King County has crossed an alarming threshold with more than 1,000 deaths in a single year. Nationwide, this harmful substance has become the leading cause of death for Americans from 18 to 35 years old, surpassing both car accidents and gun violence. Investigators warned that the amount of harmful substance seized in this case could produce 6.9 million fatal doses, enough to wipe out the populations of Seattle and Tacoma multiple times. This is not reckless smuggling, but a mass distribution machine designed to scale and keep moving relentlessly. With 3,588 deaths in a single year and 6.9 million fatal doses intercepted, the government has stopped observing and started taking decisive action. As the scale of the threat became undeniable, the federal authorities made a decisive shift. This is no longer a quiet investigation aimed at gathering evidence. It has become a comprehensive intervention, a coordinated strike designed to dismantle the network before it can adapt or vanish. Before dawn, Washington State had entered a state that high-ranking officials described as high-alert posture. More than 900 federal agents had been deployed from various agencies, including the Drug Enforcement Agency, Immigration Agency, Federal Investigation Bureau, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, and state special task forces. This was not a single raid, but a synchronized operation spanning urban centers, suburbs, ports, highways, and rural transit corridors. As the first light appeared in the Seattle sky, helicopters had taken off. Unmanned aerial vehicles spread out over industrial areas and residential zones, sealing off escape routes from above. On the ground, armored vehicles moved into position. Special task force teams lined up outside the doors. Hazardous materials units stood ready to handle toxic chemicals. At precisely calculated moments, the operation began. Doors were breached simultaneously at dozens of locations. In the warehouses, agents cut through sturdy locks while suspects inside panicked. At one facility, armed guards attempted to flee through the loading area but were stopped by K-9 units and surveillance equipment. At another location, suspects tried to destroy digital records, smashing hard drives and phones before agents rushed in to subdue them. Gunfire was prevented not by luck, but by extremely rapid action. The federal teams moved faster than the network could react. Many weapons were found loaded and ready for resistance. Hazardous materials were recovered in sealed containers, confirming investigators' fears that the operation had the potential to turn violent in an instant. At locations near the ports, hazardous substance handling teams took over. Containers were opened under strictly controlled conditions. Inside were meticulously sealed packages. Agents worked in protective suits because they knew that even a few dust particles of chemicals in the air could be life-threatening. The operation did not pause at all. Over 48 continuous hours, teams rotated to execute search warrants, secure evidence, and transport those arrested. Finally, the numbers spoke to the results of the operation. Thousands of tablets of harmful substances were seized, weapons removed from circulation, cash and digital assets frozen right in the middle of transfer. Officials later confirmed that the operation in Washington had paralyzed the criminal organization's supply chain on the East Coast, severing routes that had supplied multiple states. Intelligence analysts estimate that this disruption may have prevented thousands of deaths in the future. But perhaps the most important result is psychological. For the first time, the carefully hidden system of the criminal organization was forced to reveal itself. Their invisibility had been shattered. The message sent is very clear that the United States has chosen to confront the threat directly with force, coordination, and determination. As the raids concluded and the noise subsided, investigators had to face a harder truth. The damage caused by this network does not disappear immediately after the arrests. What the authorities discovered was not just a criminal operation, but a system that had quietly reshaped trust, commerce, and safety in the community. Financial teams began tracing the flow of money. What they found was a labyrinth designed to outlast any single raid. Millions of dollars had moved through cryptocurrency wallets, shell companies, and legitimate trusts that appeared perfectly clean on the surface. Accounts were opened, closed, and reopened under different names. Profits were divided into small, unnoticeable transfers, timed carefully to avoid system alerts. This was not reckless money laundering, but a sophisticated financial disguise. If danger hides behind the facade of prestigious lawyers, can you still believe in the safety of the system? The core of that structure is the abuse of legitimacy. Contracts, lease agreements, and legal records were used as shields. Warehouses were rented under normal commercial terms. Shipping documents were complete and properly stamped. Everything passed routine inspections because nothing appeared unusual. The criminal organization did not break the system from the outside. They used the system exactly as it was designed, but for sinister purposes. Community impact reports have painted a grim picture. In residential areas connected to the distribution routes, emergency calls for overdoses have surged quietly for months. Medical personnel describe having to return to the same addresses multiple times. Hospitals report increasing numbers of patients who believe they were taking ordinary prescription drugs. Families tell investigators the same story. There were no warnings, no prior history, and no second chance. Schools have not been spared either. Authorities confirm that the pills linked to this network have reached students through ordinary sharing rather than street-level buying and selling. A single pill, indistinguishable from the real medication, is often more than enough to cause devastating consequences. Officials emphasize that this is precisely what makes the operation so dangerous. There is no clear threat to avoid. Law enforcement leaders acknowledge another consequence: the erosion of public trust. People ask how such an operation could exist for months without being detected. The answer is uncomfortable but clear. This network relied on normality. It hid behind paperwork, professionalism, and daily routines. It succeeded because it did not look like crime. Internal audits have begun to be conducted at agencies and city departments. Transportation procedures have been revised, inspection protocols tightened, and financial monitoring expanded. However, officials admit that no protective measure is perfect when criminals are patient, disciplined, and willing to wait. Federal reports emphasize that the Washington campaign is not the end, but a warning. Criminal organizations have learned that America's strengths, such as an open economy, advanced logistics, and systems built on trust, can be turned into vulnerabilities. And they will try again somewhere else in a different form. For the investigators in this case, one striking conclusion stands out. This network does not rely on fear or chaos. It relies on comfort, on the fact that people believe danger must always look dangerous. By the time that belief is shattered, the harm has already spread deep into families and schools. The real war now is not only against the harmful substances, but also against complacency and the assumption that something with such immense destructive power would never wear a familiar face. As the investigation continues, federal officials have begun focusing on things that cannot be packaged or photographed. The most severe damage is not measured by the weight of the prohibited substances or stacks of cash, but by broken families and the widespread fear permeating normal life. Public health records reveal a pattern that had been building long before the raids took place. Overdose deaths are rising not only in urban centers, but also in suburbs and smaller communities where residents once believed they were safe from criminal violence. Emergency responders describe arriving at homes with no criminal history, no clear warning signs. Parents and loved ones are stunned, asking the same question: why did this happen here? Doctors report an alarming trend where many victims did not believe they were using prohibited substances. They thought it was familiar prescription medication. The speed of these new harmful substances leaves no margin for error. For families, there is no gradual decline, no opportunity for intervention, just a phone call in the night. Older adults feel the impact profoundly in a different way. Many are raising grandchildren or caring for adult children struggling with dependency. Communities once built on tight social bonds now face suspicion and anxiety. People become wary of packages, unfamiliar deliveries, or sudden changes in neighbors' behavior. The sense of safety that defines stable neighborhoods has begun to erode. Law enforcement leaders acknowledge the psychological burden on those on the front lines. Medical personnel and firefighters describe the exhaustion of trying to save the same lives multiple times and sometimes failing, leaving deep psychological scars. This criminal organization's business model not only destroys victims, but also exhausts those trying to protect them. Community leaders and school administrators have been mobilized. Meetings are held not to discuss crime statistics, but to address grief, anger, and fear. Many residents struggle with the reality that danger did not arrive noisily or violently. It came quietly through systems they trusted. Federal reports emphasize a sobering reality that this crisis does not target a single group. It transcends age, income, and background. It affects veterans, students, professionals, and retirees. Criminal organizations do not discriminate. They simply exploit opportunities. Authorities warn that this is why the threat is so severe. Traditional crime prevention methods are insufficient. There are no clear street corners to avoid, no visible dealers to report. Danger moves through familiar channels like transportation routes, online platforms, and everyday transactions. Intelligence analysts estimate that thousands of shipments have been disrupted or abandoned. That means thousands of lives have potentially been saved. People who never received a package, never took a pill, and never became a statistic. For law enforcement, that holds significant meaning. But no one believes the danger has completely ended. Criminal organizations always know how to adapt. That is the warning repeated in closed-door meetings. When one route collapses, another will be tested. When one method is exposed, a quieter one will be built. The discipline that allowed this network to hide right in front of everyone's eyes will be used again somewhere else under a different name, behind another respectable appearance. Federal leaders emphasize that this case marks a turning point, proving that criminal organizations today operate more like multinational corporations than ordinary gangs. They research the market, track demand, and exploit technology faster than regulations can keep up. And they rely on a dangerous assumption that most people believe something as brutal as this would be easily recognizable. That assumption is precisely what allowed this network to thrive. The Seattle case also forces organizations to confront uncomfortable truths. An open economy relies on trust, logistics depend on speed, and legal financial systems depend on honesty. When these strengths are exploited, the damage spreads silently and effectively. This is precisely what makes the threat so serious. Not the noise or chaos, but the silence and habit. Officials emphasize that mere law enforcement alone cannot shoulder this war. Raids can disrupt, arrest can dismantle networks, but long-term defense requires public awareness. Families need to understand that danger no longer looks dangerous. Communities must recognize that dependency does not always announce itself. Organizations must assume they are targets rather than exceptions. For older people, this message is especially direct. Many still remember previous addiction crises that were violent and clearly localized. This time is different. The threat arrives through familiar channels using familiar names and wearing familiar disguises. It does not knock and burst in, it casually walks through the door. The most profound lesson drawn from this event is the need to change our mindset about the appearance of crime. We often mistakenly believe that danger always comes with chaos, but in reality, the most devastating threats are hiding beneath a veneer of knowledge and elitism. Do not let glamorous exteriors or professional systems dull your vigilance. In a society that operates on trust, the alertness and sense of responsibility of each individual are the final shield. Learn to verify rather than merely assume, because lasting safety only exists when we eliminate complacency and see through the hazards lurking behind everyday normality. The Seattle case is not just a criminal takedown operation, but also a stark warning that the world we live in has changed. Danger no longer lurks on street corners. It sits in glass-walled offices and uses our own trust as a weapon. When the invisibility of crime is stripped away, the question arises, will we continue to be indifferent or start staying vigilant to protect our families? Do you believe that current safety is just an illusion? Leave a comment saying, "Wake up" if you believe that danger no longer reveals itself, and don't forget to like to spread this message. Don't let silence become complicity for the hazards lurking right at your doorstep.